When you have kids, all you want for them is what you didn't have. What do they perceive to be missing? Struggle, chaos. They have a priority to have some kind of struggle.
How have you attempted to instill that confidence and self-esteem in your boys?
I think the key to raising a sensible human being is to...
How has fatherhood changed your understanding of what it means to be a man?
I want to set a standard for how they should treat other humans, how you should treat a woman. Lead by example, because if you are who you say you are and you do what you say you're going to do, that is something that's important for your kids to witness. That's fatherhood for me. That's what a man is.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to this very special episode, this special series about fatherhood. And I'll just say a little bit before we jump in, because this is the first episode you're listening to, is I've realized that, over this last year, little Bjorn is now 1 year old and he's running and walking and shouting and screaming now. A far removed from his first few months of life when he just, kind of slept and ate and pooed and sicked, which, I look back on fond memories now. But I realized that actually, we don't talk about fatherhood that much. We don't talk about what it feels like. We don't really have much information to prepare fathers. I went through the NCT classes and all those sort of jazz, and I picked up a few books that were useful, but I just felt that there wasn't much about fatherhood from men that we look up to, men who are, as I like to say, up to amazing things in their lives in the world. So we look up and go, what's it like to be a father who is running multiple businesses, who is, in the creative industry, is working with men in many ways. So I've put this together in a way to actually speak to those men, those wonderful men that I've met along my way, who have helped me in many ways. And today we have a man who has been on the podcast before. I'm going to let him introduce himself. But Jason, it's good to have you back.
Mate, it's so good to be here. Yeah, it's always great fun catching up with you. And I love what you're doing with this podcast spin. Such a great topic.
Thank you, Jason. And like I said, I'd love you to just introduce yourself to the audience, like what you're up to, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm an investor, an entrepreneur. I run a couple of educational businesses these days, and I've just written a book. But the modern version of me is I'm a YouTuber, podcast host, all the things that you can be these days, which is amazing. But essentially, I help people achieve freedom, mental freedom, money freedom, and movement freedom. And that's the whole concept of what I call being always free. And that's what my podcast is called. That's what my book's called. And yeah, that's what I do.
This is something that many men want, this feeling of freedom to be able to do what they want, when they want, where they want.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common trap that a lot of people think that it's just down to finances. But I've met so many people who are either born into wealth and they don't know who they are, and I've met people who are great at earning money, but they don't have any money to show for it, So it's there's a little bit more to the puzzle than just finances, for sure.
And it's interesting though, because that freedom, this desire for freedom almost kind of goes against the idea of being a father and having children, because I know you've got two boys now, not really boys anymore, are they? They're now men, as you said. There's like a kind of almost this like juxtaposition of these two identities, like creating freedom, but having two sons.
Yeah. So when I found out like I was going to have kids in the first place, when I was very young, I was 22 when I found out we were going to have the first baby. And it was my worst nightmare, mate. I did not want kids. And the reason I didn't want kids at that point is because I believe that you value most what you perceive to be missing most as a kid. So by the time you're 7, your kind of character's shaped. And for me, my upbringing was, no father figure, me and my mum on our own in council estate, electricity runs out, can't pay the bill, bailiff's knocking on the door, we have to hide behind the sofa, all that kind of stuff. My mum tries to make ends meet, and I get left with a babysitter called Shirley Parr, who's married to Joey Parr, who's like one of the gangsters in London. He was like Ronnie Cray's best man at his wedding, and and my earliest memories basically are just like chaotic lack of security. That's how I would explain it. And I guess because of that, because I perceived to have such a lack of security, my highest priority as I grew up was to provide security. And obviously I navigate and find that money is one of those things. But really, when I got to the point of being 22 and finding out we're having our first son, I felt like I'd failed in life because I never felt ready. I felt like, oh, this is not what I envisioned. This is not what I wanted, because I felt like he's just going to have the same upbringing as me. It's going to be terrible. And I really didn't want that for him. So it put a rocket up my backside. It made me really take things seriously with my goals and what I wanted in life. But for me, the perception was like, it wasn't so much the freedom thing, but it was, I can't provide for him. I can't even look after myself properly yet. I haven't done what I said I was going to do yet, and I was a kid. I was a kid having a kid. Looking back, he's 20 now. So he's only 2 years younger than when I had him. And it feels like yesterday. But am I glad that I did? Yeah, absolutely. It was the best thing. I wouldn't be where I am today if we hadn't seen that through and had him, and it's just amazing.
Wow, that's incredible. Because like you said, that life you grew up in, council estates, and I know that life as well, the crazy things that happens on council estates, police regularly being called to people's houses, kicking down doors because someone's shouting and screaming, domestic violence, all those things that you see, drugs. And you see lots of you see lots of different types of fathering around you, right? Even if it's not your own father, you see how some of the other guys around you are fathering and so forth. And what was that imprint? What was the imprint that you kind of had when you were sitting as a 22-year-old man having your first child? What was the imprint of what a father is to you at that point?
Yeah. So for me, it was like everything that my real dad wasn't. So it was like, I want to be the opposite of that guy. So I wanted to always be there. I wanted to make sure that he felt loved. I wanted to make sure that I had financial stability, a roof over your head. I wanted to make sure that we were there to pick him up from school every day. That was really important. Take them to school. I wanted to have free time to just spend with them. And when my wife found out I was pregnant, I said, look, I really feel for her, because I said, look, I really don't want it. And I just said, just give me some time. Must have been really hard for her, right? Because, abortion or anything, that just wasn't an option. We were going to do it. I'm a believer. It takes two to tango, and, you have to own your shit, right? You have to be accountable, and you have to be responsible. And that happened. And I remember saying, like, just give me a bit of time. Like, I'll just get my head around it. And what I've always done, I don't know why I've always done this, but I really try to visualize the reality of what this will look like what my life will look like, what my day-to-day will look like, how much it will cost me, and all this kind of stuff. And I got as finicky into that stuff. But it took me about 5 months. and after 5 months into the pregnancy, I still really didn't want to talk about it. My wife would talk about it to my mum and stuff. And anyway, at the same time, coincidentally, we knew someone else who was pregnant. And their dad, they were about the same age, and their dad was like really overexcited. It was like, when he comes, we're going to go football, take him to the thing, get football kits and all that. And it was like a bit over the top. And I just remember looking at him thinking, this hasn't sank. Like, you don't know how this is going to, you haven't sat down and done what I've done. You haven't sat down and done the math, And anyway, when the baby comes along, I'm fully supportive. By that time, I'm like, I'm ready for this. When he comes, I was the most doting father ever, loved it. Wouldn't let him out my sight, spent as much. I was there, and I've been there since that time. The other guy, he was gone. He was gone because it came, and it was such a shock to his system because he hadn't got his head around it. He just wanted to go back out to the clubs and the bars, and he was off. He was gone. It was kind of like a midlife crisis in your early 20s, but he was gone. And it proves, like, if you don't have realistic expectations, and I know no one trains you to be a parent, but you can kind of, you can meditate on it. You can get really close to what it's going to be, and you can start to practice having different emotions, different feelings, and what that's going to be like as much as you can. And then when they come along, at least you're a bit more grounded, and at least it's not something that's going to sideswipe you. So that's what I did. And yeah, as I say, when he came along, it's just the best thing in the world. You know, it really is.
Wow. So it's like what I hear you there is your initial reaction is you know, fear, worry, stress.
Totally.
And you probably had some of the visions probably came to you. It wasn't, those emotions wouldn't have come without the story that they create, you know, about how maybe your own life had been and how it possibly could be in the future. That was kind of playing through your mind. And what you used to kind of combat that was a very conscious, willful way of going, actually, this is the future that I want to create. This is the future I want to create.
Yeah, exactly. And breaking it down. So it's the same as kind of like, I do the same process with any like goal setting or anything like that, because I think a lot of people set goals, but no one really plans goals. And what that creates is an overwhelm. And you get this overwhelm and you start procrastinating and stuff like that because you've got overwhelm. And the reason you've got overwhelm is because whatever it is you're trying to do just isn't chunked down into small bite-sized pieces, so you can't see it for what it is. So you've got all this big goal, I'm going to be a dad, right? And there might be things in there that you enjoy about being a dad. There might be things that you hate being about a dad. Same if you've got like, you want to start a business, right? It's like, well, I don't really like the tax stuff and the dealing with people stuff, but I love creating ideas and products and, you know, all that. But because you haven't broken it all out for what it is, it's one big goal. You know that horrible stuff's in there somewhere, but it's murky. So you're just like, I just won't bother starting, you know, and you get this overwhelm. So what I always do is just break it all out. It was like, right, okay, what's my sleep going to be like? My diet, you know, my bills, my finances, my gym routine, my work, you know, my relationship with my wife, and how we're going to, and then you start chunking it down and you see it for what it is. And then you can say, okay, well, I can put this contingency in there and I can work around this and I can move that to there. And all of a sudden it just becomes less overwhelming because you're seeing it for what it is. And that really, really helped. If I hadn't done that, I would have been, you know, it would have come and it would have been a big slap around my face.
And that creates like a level of certainty as well in the process.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of, it's almost certain, you know, it's almost like, oh, okay, well, that's what my life will look like. It's no different to just like looking at a diary for next week, you know, but you've just got some alterations. And I think when you see it like that, you don't overthink it. It's not, you know, it just becomes real, and it really helps. Although it doesn't quite prepare you for, you know, being sick on and all that fun stuff. It gets you pretty close for sure.
Yeah. And I think from listening to your podcast in the past, you made some big changes though when you kind of found out, you know, you shifted career, you know, you made some big life changes to step into the man and create the kind of circumstance and environment you wanted. Like, how was that to juggle that big changes and having a child, a new child in your life?
Yeah. It flipped my perception of risk in many ways. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So I was always talking about this idea that I'd become financially independent one day. You know, I'd start my own business, I'd start investing and all this kind of stuff. And when he came along, my ability to take calculated risks shifted. So the risk of not doing it was greater than the risk of doing it, right? Because I kind of got this rocket up me. It was like, right, if you don't do this now, this is the life you're going to have. And if you do it, it's going to be more to where you've planned it, you know? And so I had to do it. But it also made me take less risks on my health. You know, it made me take, like, I was an electrician, right? Electrical engineer. And I used to just think nothing of like standing on a rubber mat and drilling through a live buzz bar, you know, like a big copper buzz bar whilst it was live, because I couldn't be bothered to turn it off. And I would just drill through this thing live because I'm on a rubber mat. You know, as soon as he was born, there was no way I was taking any risks like that. I was not doing anything like that. And it was like, you get this kind of overwhelming urge to look after yourself a bit better. And I don't know if you found that, but I certainly found that, and you kind of, it's like you get spidey senses. It's a really weird feeling. I remember leaving the hospital, and I had him in the car. I had to go and get the car, so I left him in reception with my wife, but I didn't want to put him down. I'm looking at everyone like someone's going to steal him. It was really bizarre. You feel vulnerable. You feel a bit vulnerable, but protective at the same time. It's really strange. I never forget that feeling. But yeah, so we had him, and all the things that I was talking about doing before, it just made me go, do you know what? It's too risky to not do this now. I need to do this because I need to be this person for my son. And that was what made me, literally, I rang up the job that I had, the boss, and I left a voice note. We'd just moved into a bigger house so that he could have a room. So I'd taken on a bigger property payment. It was Christmas time, so it's like just paid for presents. I wasn't financially in the best situation. I left a voice note on the answer machine just before Christmas break, and I said, look, or in the Christmas break, I said, look, after Christmas, I'm going to start on my own. I want to do that. So I'll work my notice or what have you, and then after that, I'll start on my own. So it was kind of back against the wall type thing. But when I went back in January, I thought they'd say, okay, work for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, your notice. But they were like, okay, you got like 3 days and you can go. And it was just like, I was like, right, this is it, So it was like jumping at the deep end, just try and make things work. And that really, really helped me. Like, it was like, as I say, back against the wall accountability. And I was just driven to make, I never looked back, that was it.
Wow. And I imagine in the kind of subsequent few years, you were probably working pretty hard, doing a lot of hours, putting a lot of energy in. Were there any moments where you found yourself kind of working so hard and maybe like not spending the time you wanted with your son and your wife? Like, how did you, if that happened, how did you feel in those moments?
Yeah. So there was, I started, so when he was, so there was a period of time when he was like 1, 2, where I spent a lot of time with him. That was kind of the transition out of one business that I worked for into my own business, and I was just kind of at home a lot because I was making a lot of phone calls and I was doing this, and I was kind of flexible. I was on my phone, and I'd take him out a lot every Saturday. Every Saturday morning I'd take him out before my wife woke up and everything, and it was great. And then obviously the crunch time when things started to, I was required a lot more in the business. He was probably about 5 or 6, and I would still make sure that I'm there for his school plays and sports day. And the way I tried to manage it is I've always been an early bird, so I'd get up at like 4:30, 5 a.m. and I would finish whatever work I was doing by like 3 p.m. and then I would be there from like school till bedtime. So and then when they go to bed, I would work like from 9 p.m. till like 1 a.m. So I did that for about 4 years, and it was when the second son came along. He was the one that got neglected. he was the one that but we'll talk about that in a little while, because I'll tell you how they both kind of turned out, which is quite fascinating. But yeah, it was tough, but you just, I valued being the right dad so much that I just wouldn't let it show. So there's no way that that they would know, even if I was stressed as hell, I just wouldn't show it. I wouldn't put it on them. And yes, of course, there was times where my patience were being tested to the max and I would snap a little bit, but no, there was no, I tried to always have time for him, always, if he had a question, great, I'm here for you, kind of thing. But it was bloody tough. It's really hard. No one trains you how to do any of that stuff. And my wife is the opposite of me, and I think that is amazing. I think opposites attract is a true, I believe so wholly in that, because everyone's out there trying to find people who have everything in common. To me, a solid relationship is where you're supporting each other in areas you're crap at, and I'll go out and do this, I'll go and do the business stuff and make the money and all this. And you're very empathetic and compassionate and caring. And there were things that I was really crap at. And she would bring that out in me. She would force me to cringe, and force me to really test my comfort zone. The fact that my mum was so prudish, I'd never talk about sex, never talk about anything like that, right? So I grew up with this kind of weird view on sex, and my wife, she talks openly to my sons, and I'm like cringing, but I'm so glad she does that, I'm so glad that they can do that, because I wish I was able to do that when I was a kid. I'd have a normal view on everything, but so she helps me, I help her, and they talk to her about things that they wouldn't talk to me about, and vice versa. And it's just such a, I've been with my wife for 23 years nearly, and we've been married for like 16 years. So I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah. And I really picked my ears when you said like you didn't want them to see when you were stressed when you had a lot on. And would I be right in imagining that wasn't what your experience was when you were a kid, that you probably experienced, when your parents, they had a lot on, you really knew and you were very aware of that?
Oh yeah, it was, I mean, most of my memories were like screaming, shouting, my mum met my stepdad when I was 6, and yeah, they were always arguing, and it was usually about money, or it was usually about, something like that. And as you said, the dads around the estate, I saw one dad have a mental breakdown, and he was walking around the estate with a hammer going, where's that dog? I'm going to eat the dog. And I remember all this stuff. It's like, wow, what is this? It's like a Jack Nicholson, like Cuckoo's Nest type thing. I was like, what's going on? But yeah, I I didn't want any of that chaos. I tried to maintain a calm and balanced environment, even if I wasn't feeling it on the inside. But when I was growing up, yeah, it was a complete opposite. It was chaos.
Yeah, and as you said, you said at the start of the episode, it's like the things we didn't have when we were young, we value as adults. And I think, there's another layer to that, isn't it? It's if we realize that those things are, because some people, they just relive their parents' experience of being parents, right? They don't even think about it. They assume that it was okay, and they go, well, oh, I'm fine. I love those words. People say, well, I turned out okay. So, and then they just, without any thought, without any work on themselves, because what I'm hearing in you, there was a very conscious, deliberate, I don't want things to be the way they were for me. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to work on myself to make sure those things aren't the case. So I guess the question I have actually is, were there moments where the father you didn't want to be came out, even if a little bit, and how did you treat yourself in those moments or after those moments?
Of course. So there is they say the apple never falls too far from the tree, right? I'm fully, I believe that. But I think when you witness something happening in your childhood, you're either going to accept that that's the way it is, or you're going to take the opposite stance. So like for everyone telling me money was bad and all that, like, the negative views around money, I could have just believed that and said, oh, money's the root of all evil. Or I could have just seen the opposite and be like, right, well, money is something that provides security. So little story, there was 2 coincidental moments, and I'm not sure if I spoke about this on the first time round, but I would listen to all this negative talk around money, and what I witnessed was every Friday everyone would kind of just talk about their week, and we'd sit at the block of flats, and at the foot of our block of flats they'd talk about money, and I would just pick up that they were just angry around money. Like I was a nosy kid. I don't profess to be like analyzing them entirely, but I remember negative words around money. And then this guy called Roy would come down, take everyone's money and do a syndicate lottery, right? And I was like, and then for 10 minutes they'd talk about how amazing money was, and I just remember thinking, that's like so weird. I don't know why they're doing that. So I just remember being confused. Later on that year, I really wanted this BMX bike for my birthday. And I said to my mum, I'd love this bike. She said, we can't afford it, but we'll put half towards it in October, which is 6 months from now, if you can raise the other half. So I just started doing this car wash. Washed a car, got £5, £2 tip. My mate said he'd help me. And I said, right, I'll give my stepdad everything I'd earned the first day, £7. And I said, can you get me a bucket and sponge when you go to the shopping? And they got me a bucket and sponge. The next day we did 4 cars. And then within 4 weeks, we had 4 friends and we were doing 16 cars. And it was, I wasn't doing any car washing. So I was just knocking on the doors and getting the money and booking the next one in and going block to block to block. And I remember thinking, this is how you use money, because they must not be using money right. Because when you use it like this, not only can you get what you want eventually, you have to sacrifice a little bit of time, but you can still get what you want, but do more of what you want, and do more of what you love rather than doing the crap jobs that they seem to be moaning about. And I just remember, I felt like I discovered fire at that point. It was like, I must know something that all these people don't, but it was really weird moment. Anyway, where I displayed the traits, because we all have every trait. I don't believe in judgment or anything like that, because we've all got everything. And I've never met anyone who's always nice, and I've never met anyone who's always kind, and it just doesn't exist. We've all got everything. Interestingly, my real dad, he was a gangster type person, and he built a window cleaning business. But his window cleaning business, he would only hire drug addicts with drug addictions. And what he would do is he would get them to go and steal jewelry from these houses and then give him the jewelry like some modern day Fagin. And he would give them their fix, right? So he would pay them. And if they got caught, they wouldn't have the fix. So he was entrepreneurial, but in a bad way. He was kind of using the force for bad. And you know all the gangland drug gangs, they're all amazing entrepreneurs. They know the numbers. They know they can influence people, with force, but in the wrong way. But they're entrepreneurs really. And I think what my real dad had was an entrepreneurial way about him, but he just used it for darkness and narcissistic reasons only. Whereas for me, I kind of grew up seeking security. I subconsciously navigated that in a way where I figured out that money could actually be used to provide security. And if you use it in a good way and you serve other people and you delegate and use it right, you can actually have a fair exchange, which makes you feel good and you get what you want. And that was the difference. So in business, I took my real dad's traits and kind of washed them up and made them good. And as a dad, have I expressed traits that he had? I'd like to say no. I'd like to say no, because the only thing I'm grateful for in my real dad is the fact that he was the opposite to me, and I'm me now. So I in terms of fatherhood skills or fatherhood traits, I don't think I've expressed anything that he had. Not that I can think of yet anyway. I've always been there for my kids. When I think of my real dad, I think he didn't want me. He didn't care. He was really narcissistic. He had no good intention in terms of how to make money. He didn't provide any security. He used to hit all his girlfriends and physically abuse them. So yeah, I've never ever laid a finger on anyone. I hate violence. So I'm just the opposite. I'm just the opposite guy.
Wow, it's a powerful story. It's a powerful story to see, his kind of entrepreneurial spirit, which he did have, as you described there. Like you said, it's kind of used in all the wrong ways. And I guess that takes me on to another question I have is, I know there was a point in your son's schooling that you were like, they need to be schooled differently. And you took them out of school and you homeschooled them. And if I remember rightly, you even created a whole curriculum for them. I'd love to find out from you, what kind of spurred you to do that?
So I mean, if you look at the kids now at school, it's a real challenge. Whether you like to believe it or not, or you're for school or against school, right now there's going to be a generation of kids that are learning stuff right now for jobs that won't exist, and we're in this weird period where people are learning accountancy and people are learning, and you just won't need an accountant. Like I know, like people say, oh yeah, you will need accountants. No, you really won't. Like there's that will not be a thing. And we're in this really strange time where a load of kids are wasting their entire day at school learning things for stuff that they just won't need. And I remember like the joke is like, oh, you won't always have a calculator in your pocket, right? But now it's much more serious than that. It's like, you always need an accountant, or you'll always need a solicitor. I'm not sure. I'm not sure now. So we're in this weird period. I see that coming a mile off quite a while back. But I also saw my kids. There's this whole argument about what about the social element. Now, I'm not being funny. My kids can communicate better than most kids I've seen. They can't talk. I talk to kids these days. They can't look you in the eye. They can't finish sentences. They look nervous. They don't, because anything away from their screen, they don't know how to behave. So you're not telling me that school is helping their social skills, because they're all on their phones in the playground. It's actually destroying their social skills. A little bit of playground time is not going to make up for what social media is doing to their personality and their social skills, because it's an unfair thing. Social media is well outdoing schools on that. It's destroying it. So my kids were engaged at school to about 12, 13, 14 maybe. And then it was just like, look, I like one topic, or I like two topics, and the rest I'm just so disengaged, And I was like, well, are you sure? Are you sure you don't, this doesn't interest you, that doesn't interest you? Anyway, results were coming back. They just weren't engaged, but they were really good at certain few things. And I was like, well, it's another 2 years of going to school for 6.5 hours and doing 1.5 hours of things you love, or just come out and do 4 or 5 hours of the thing you love, and that was the idea. It was like, you really don't need any of that other stuff, because you're coming from me. I failed all my GCSEs, and by the time I was 29, retired, and there's no way that I could turn around to my kids when they said I hate school and go, oh, I know, but you do have to do it. You just have to do it, because I didn't believe that myself. I didn't believe that you needed school, so I had to be congruent with that. So I said, look, okay, you come out of school, I know what you like. I'm going to guide you and push you in areas that you like. And then we're going to find something there. And basically the curriculum, it was more of a support network. I had people in the entrepreneurial space. I had people in, health, wealth, business, relationships, physical, everything. So it was like pulling my best people and going, let's have your advice, let's have your best work. And really just, I'd go for walks with my kid, and we'd do like 2 hour walks, and we'd pick a topic and we'd just talk about it. And we'd be, if there's any questions that come up, I'd ask the expert, or I'd ask, and we'd teach and learn on these walks. But really what happened was my son, like Ethan, my youngest son, he just came out of school at 14, loved, he was very creative, like graphic design. He started learning Premiere Pro. He started building a YouTube channel, teaching people how to edit. And then all of a sudden he starts doing reels for people, and I'm introducing him to people, and he's earning like 3 to 5 grand a month just doing these social media reels because of the skill that he's learned, because he hasn't needed motivation to learn it. He's just gone, I love Premiere Pro, I love video editing. He's just like learning everything about it. Now he's doing all the reels for all of my network, earning money, and by the time he's 16, his mates are just doing their GCSEs and trying to get placed at college and get a job. They probably won't earn 5 grand a month for, I don't know, maybe never. and my son's like, and I know it's not about the money, but it doesn't feel like work. It's like he's doing something that he would have done anyway, and now we're just lucky enough to monetize it, because everything's monetizable. And to me, that's just the better way to go. Life is about just having enough money coming in to do what you really want to do, And if you can just do what you want to do every day, but be paid, that's a real bonus, And that's all life's about. Like, that's all I want to do for the rest of my life. I don't want to, I was talking to someone the other day about goals. Like, I'm in a position now, I don't have any goals. I don't have any aspirations. If I could live every day like today and die, I'd be a very happy person, like by the end of my life. I don't have any goals anymore. I just want to make sure that I can maintain this level of comfort and these experiences for the rest of my days. And that's it, man. So yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but I don't even know where the question was now, but yeah, that's the kind of answer.
No, you said it all there. I was asking why you took him out of school, but you're saying you took him out of school because you just didn't see there wasn't a deep belief in the structure and the system, and you could see where the education was shifting and going, and we really realize that now, right? Like, it is with the AI and the super AIs and the agents and all this. A lot of what we did before is disappearing. Like, I'll give you an example of me. Like, I used to work in tech for many years, writing code and testing stuff. And now when
you got Replit.
Yeah. Now when I'm doing stuff with my own website, I know enough code that I can just sit down with some AI and go, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want the colors to be like. Give me the HTML and the CSS, and I can build out the whole thing. I don't really need a developer anymore to do that work, unless I really don't want to do that bit. And then I can find the developer who's going to basically do what I just did and pay him to do so.
Absolutely.
I was going to ask the question of, because, you're an entrepreneurial man and you've really put this spirit into your children. And, a lot of kids, a lot of 20-somethings, 30-somethings, they have no financial education, right? We don't go to school. We don't get educated about finance and money. So I guess the question I've got for you is, how did you instill this kind of financial understanding and entrepreneurial spirit into your boys as they were growing up?
Yeah, really, really interesting, because I've had kids when I was 22, so I've basically gone through all the ages now. They're at like one's 17, one's 20, so they're basically, I've seen it all. There's not going to be much. I might support them around getting married or whatever and having kids, but there's not really much like fathering. I can, like, all that heavy lifting's done in the early years, right? So one of the reasons that I do what I do in the first place, like one of the reasons I wanted to be in the position I was in, is because when I was considering pulling my kids out of school or talking about it, it turned out that every parent that I knew wanted to do it, right? They were like, I agree, I want to do that as well. And the reason they couldn't is because they had to go to work to earn the money. So it was like they had this guilt that they couldn't give the kid, like they couldn't let them kid do that because they had to go to work to pay, which is a very valid reason. Like, you have to go work and earn money. I wanted to be in a position where I could support my kids to follow their goals and their dreams without being spoilt and entitled, which is a very, very difficult balancing act, and I don't know how we've done it, and I probably haven't done it perfectly, because it leads on to the next point, which is, one, what I've seen in families is siblings will be the opposite of each other anyway. I just think from an evolutional standpoint, we are built for diversity to survive. So there'll be, like what I said about the partnerships. It's like, you're good at that, I'm good at that. And then the kids will be good at that and good at that. And you've got like this quadrant, right? Where it's like, we can do everything. We've got the longest chance of survival. So one will be the academic, one will be the caring one will be, one will be the creative, one will be the, so that's kind of what the kids are. They're opposites of each other. And going back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast is, I think that we value most what we perceive to be missing most, right? So there's this great saying is like, weak times create strong people create, right? Good times creates something, and it creates hard times and all this, right? So it's this cycle. So I perceived to have no security, no finances, nothing, right? So I have valued making that my life. My life's goal was to create security and freedom and abundance and financial stability. So when you have kids, all you want for them is what you didn't have. You just want them to just have everything you didn't have. Well, of course, what do they perceive to be missing when they were kids? Struggle. Right? Chaos. They have a priority to have some kind of struggle. This is why you see all of the really rich kids, they turn to drugs and they turn to things, and they're chaos because they're trying to get that in their life because they think it's been missing. They've missed it. So they're trying to get that balance, And interestingly, I've now had to navigate that whole period of my son becoming a little bit rebellious of me helping him. It's like, oh, I don't want your help, Dad. I don't want your help. I'm my own person. So even though you really want them, and it's almost like they're trying to have a hard life, right? At times. And I don't know if that's my perception, but it's like, you are doing this deliberately so you have a struggle, because if you just did this, it would be so much easier, but you're choosing to do that or ignoring it, and it's not going to go away, and now it's going to get worse. And it's almost like, is that deliberate? Is that something that they are manifesting, because they feel that way? So now it's like, how much do you help them? It's really hard to not help them because all you want to do is just help them, and then do they feel worthy? Do they feel like daddy's given them everything? Do they feel like, so you have to manage all that. And it's like, wow, and then that's another level of you are not trained for that, because it's almost like something you don't see coming. And now you have to deal with it, and you have to unpeel it before it's too late, or, you have to start making some changes. So we have to go through all that as well. And it's like, so the way I've tried to manage it is, I educate them on finances. I've put habits into them of how to go about earning money, how you earn money, how you manage your money. And because they're two opposites, one, it's easier than the other. So one is like deliberately trying to improve and really, really working. I don't want to, it sounds horrible. One's really obviously trying to improve themselves. One, it's a little bit harder, and it's trying to get them both to be happy and see life for what it is. And of course, at 17 and 20, you think that if you haven't got something in 10 minutes, you're a failure. And that one thing I've tried to instill in my kids is you can have anything you want. You just have to practice, work at it, do the thing, and you get the result. And we've instilled that belief in them over and over again. Like, one of my kids wanted to do a backflip, and he couldn't do a backflip. So I said, well, you will do a backflip. You just have to practice. And then months go by, and then he's just doing backflips, right? And then he's like, oh yeah, I can do it. And then the next thing comes along, he's like, oh, I'll never be able to do this. And I'm like, remember with the backflip, you just have to do this, this, and this. And he does it. And then all of a sudden he can do it. And now he's like, well, I know I can do it. I've just got to learn how to do it. So he's got a completely different attitude, and they both know that. They both know that they can do whatever they set their minds to. But I think I'm glad I had kids when I did, because they haven't, like, we've never had technology at the tables. We've never been out, phones on the table, iPads, all that kind of stuff. We've always brought our kids into conversation. We've never been out of sight, out of mind with our kids. We want them. They're our mates. We want them in the conversation. We want, we've always tried to do that, and they're just lovely kids, man. I couldn't wish for better kids. And it's just navigating that whole, how much do you help them? That's tough. That's where I'm at right now, I'd say. We're trying to help, but not trying to help. Trying to be hard on them, let them learn their own way, kind of thing, when that's the last thing you want to do. You just want to go, oh, look, I'll help you. But it's tough. That's where I'm at now.
Wow, it's a real juggle, that, because one of the things you said about rebellion, and I kind of had this idea that, and I see this with a lot of the men that I work with, is I believe that at some point in our lives, we have to rebel against our parents' rules and agenda, because that's how we find who Absolutely. We are. It's like, that's the point where we go, well, I'm going to go and do all these things in the way that I want to do them. I'm going to disregard your rules. I might even deliberately break them just to break them. And you're saying here, helping them, not helping them. It must be a really difficult point, because they're just saying, I don't want to do things the way you've done it, even though the way you've done it is a really great way, but they want to go against it. But you also can see for yourself from your own life experience that their rebellion is a necessary part to them becoming their own sovereign person.
Absolutely. But I've also, I preach this stuff all the time. I said, never look up to people. And something I've told my kids their whole life is never look up to me. Never, ever look up to me. Never compare yourself to me and what I've done, because the last thing I want is them feeling bad because they're trying to look up to me and live in my shadow and what I've done. What I've done means nothing to them. And you should always be your own person. I've really made a conscious effort to instill that in my kids throughout their lives. And even still, it's still like, it's hard because you're an authority to them, and they do look up to you. We are impressionable as humans. We want to please and appease our parents. We do. And I'm sure one day they'll go, oh yeah, Dad was right. We should have questioned, we shouldn't worry about him. We should do our thing. And yeah, it's just tough, mate, because you know what you want. You just want them to be happy, but they're looking up to you sometimes and trying to impress you, and I don't want them to impress me. But at the same time, I want to give them the right advice and make sure I steer them, and I think I'm doing a good job of it. But it's, as I say, you don't get grades or anything for this, do you? It's just there you go. There you go. And I think the beautiful thing that most people could understand is just understanding that whole value system. Knowing why people are doing certain things. And this is another thing that I tell them. It's like, if someone ever is rude to you or bullies you or hurts you, just look at them and think about why they're doing that, and understand them and love them and love the reason that they're doing that, and appreciate the reason they're doing that. And I've always tried to tell them that. And I think that's a really powerful thing to understand. And I think they get that, they understand that. Very calm, they're very poised guys. One's more emotional than the other. But yeah, all you can do is just kind of let them go in the end, and hope you've done a good job. But we always get told that they're great kids. So yeah, I couldn't wish for anything more.
Yeah. And, you're in the space of personal development. So you've probably seen firsthand all the many people that, come into your programs and stuff, and they're talking about these kind of father issues, mummy issues. You kind of alluded to before about, trying to impress their dad. The number of entrepreneurs out there that are making millions and billions that are still trying to impress the father that's around or not around, right? Or people's issues around their worth and value because of something their father once said to them. Like, you've seen all of these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I guess the question that comes to me, because I feel like confidence and self-esteem is such an important aspect of living a successful life. Whatever success is to you, but living a successful life is so important to have confidence and self-esteem. And you alluded to before, but I still want to ask the question: how have you attempted to, again, instill that confidence and self-esteem in your boys? Because for boys, especially in the world we grow up now, there's a lot of narratives about young boys and so forth that come from the outside. So I'm really wondering how you have done that, consciously decided, I want them to be confident young boys and men, and to be men who really can believe in themselves.
Yeah. So one is trying to guide them in areas that they enjoy, because I see a lot of people have this imposter syndrome thing, right? Where they're trying to be people that they're not. So be yourself, be who you are, do things that are meaningful to you. And when you enjoy things and you're energized to talk about a certain topic, or your work is something you would choose to do, even if you wasn't being paid, you're usually going to have more confidence in that particular field anyway. So you're not hiding or trying to imitate, or you've got your own spin on it. You've got your own thoughts on it, right? So there's that. The second thing is never look up to people. Don't look up to people, because as soon as you look up to people, you're ignoring all the traits that you're not seeing in them, and you're minimizing yourself. And then you're trying to live in their, live up to their expectation, or live up to a fantasy, and the moment you do that, you're going to self-minimize, you're going to lose your confidence. So don't look up to people. See the traits in them that you've got. See the traits in you that they've got, and where you've got struggle, try and see where they struggle, and try and balance, bring them back down to earth. I've always told them that. I've always tried to instill that there's no such thing as good and bad. It's just things that happen, and you're just not seeing one side of the coin, So really, it's all geared around not having fantasies about an outcome. There was a period of time where my kids would be like, oh, if we did that, it'd be so much better. And I'd be, oh, it'd be so much better apart from this, and that'd be the reality. And it was what I did when I found out I was going to have my son. Having a kid, and what the other guy was like, it'd be so great having a kid, and I was like, yeah, except this, and this, and when you see that, when you see the downsides to any fantasy, or the reverse, you kind of look down on something, or you feel something's going to be negative. If you try and see the good in that, it'll bring it back to a neutral, poised position. And I think practicing that on a day-to-day basis with anything that happens to you is good. And an example is like, I'm not sure if I shared this before, but like if you come home and found your partner cheating on you, right? It's like the worst thing at that point in time that ever happened to you. And it might take you a few months, few years to even build up the courage to kind of trust and go on the dating scene and all this kind of stuff, right? But 20 years later, you could ask the person, was that the worst thing that ever happened to you? And I guarantee they'll say it was the best thing that ever happened to me, right? It was the best thing because now I've got this life, met this person, had these kids, traveled here, traveled there, got all these things. The fact that it took 20 years was a complete inefficiency to see that it was just a thing that happened, And it was the worst thing then, but it's the best thing now. So it really was just a thing. And imagine if it didn't take you 20 years. Imagine if you could see it on the spot. Imagine on that day you walked in and then immediately you saw the good, and of course that is like different level of mental mastery. And we don't all, I know it's not real, but imagine you could practice seeing the lessons in every perceived fail or setback or drawback or disaster. And at the same time, not get too cocky, because every time you look up to something or you have a fantasy about something, you see the downsides and you ask yourself, well, what could go wrong? What am I not seeing that brings you back down to earth, and you make better decisions, better investments, better, maybe you didn't buy that thing on a whim, or maybe you didn't build that relationship with someone who's done a dirty on someone, so you try and see events for what they are. There's no good and bad, just things. And I think just being a poised person can make you feel really, really confident in your decisions.
What I'm hearing in all this is developing the ability to kind of trust their own choices and decisions, and see that they don't know where this choice and decision will take them or what the impact will be, but they can be okay with whatever it is now, in this moment here and now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The last one is taking information from people and then kind of synthesizing paradoxes, because there's going to be people, depending on everyone's values, they're going to be spouting opinions at you and what you should and shouldn't do based on what served them. So when I was learning to drive, I asked my stepdad, should I learn an automatic car or a manual car? And he said manual car. And I was like, okay. So I learned in a manual car, and it took me twice as long because it was more difficult. It cost me more in lessons because it took me twice as long. And since I passed my test, I've driven an automatic car, and now all cars are going automatic. And it's like, there's a bit of resentment because I don't really care. I don't like driving. So why didn't I question it? Why didn't I question it and align what I want, and go, actually, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I want this. And I know that's a kind of jovial little example, but we make 35,000 decisions a day in our head, something like that. Imagine like every one of them, imagine the compounding effect in resentment of just not questioning anyone's advice. You're going to be far removed from who you thought you would be. Like, you thought you'd end up here, but you're down here. And the reason you end up down here is because you took all these little decisions that you wouldn't have taken had you gone, yeah, but what do I want? What do I want? So you get a confidence by taking these opinions and going, okay, well, what do I want? Well, okay, well, I like that bit of what he said, and I like that bit of what she said, and I'm going to do this because it's more aligned to what I want. So you have a new confidence when you do that, because you're controlling your life. You're not just hoping that you've taken the right advice from people.
Sounds like when I put that together, it's like an information literacy. Like you've taught them to be able to take information and go, how should I take this in? How true is this? Well, who is this person behind it? Do I want to be this person? And so forth.
What results have they got?
Yeah.
What have they done to demonstrate the proof in what they're saying as well?
Yeah, because it's I go and speak in schools sometimes to young boys, and one of the things, a couple of years ago, I was in schools talking a lot about, Andrew Tate and that sort of thing. And what I thought was quite remarkable is they just saw somebody and what that somebody had, and were like, I want to be like this person, so I should listen to everything this person says and does, because that's going to get me there. Yeah. And I guess, it's off the back of this question you said about literacy, and I guess media literacy kind of comes into it as well, because I imagine that you've probably consciously taught them how to absorb media and how to judge what they're taking in. So I guess, how have you had to contend with this? Because we're in this new age, like you said, of social media, where we do have these influencers that are like, to be a man, you need to be this way, and to be a woman, you need to be this way. How have you, as a father, kind of come up against this and managed it with your boys?
Yeah, so for starters, my boys don't use social media. They've been periods of time where they have used it. They're just not really into it. And whether that's just a result of just our family being like our family and everything I've taught them, maybe they don't see the use in it. But yeah, I love what you said about Andrew Tate. What I tell them is like, everything's half true, right? So whatever you see out there, there's a flip side to the coin. So if they're saying X, well, there's a Y side of it, and you're just seeing the side that they want you to see. And there's definitely been periods of time when my kids, when he has had social media, he said, go to Dubai. And, they're living the life in Dubai. Well, I went to Dubai recently, and they are incentivizing creators so much, because I know a group of creators out there that they're all sleeping on a sofa in the same house. They've got no money, and yet they're out doing free restaurants, free bars, all this, because Dubai are actually incentivizing it. And they're saying, if you come into our bar, we'll give you all free drinks, we'll give you all free meals, just do some social media posts, don't film any empty tables, and we'll give you all free drinks. So the perception of that is, look at these guys, they must be so rich, they're living a life in Dubai, going to all these fancy restaurants, getting all these free drinks and all this kind of stuff. The other side is they're broke as hell, like trying to make it work, and they're doing what they need to do to get paid or get even drink and food, right? They're just like, oh, I need to eat today, so I'll go and do this because it's free food. So it's such a contrast, but you're only seeing one side. And I try to lift the bonnet on as many of those situations as I can with my kids. That's the sort of conversations we have at dinner. What about so and so? They look so good, and we'll go, oh yeah, where do you see? Where's the drawbacks in that? Or or one of my sons might say, oh, I'm crap at doing this or whatever, and we'll say, well, where's the good? What, and we'll try and find the good. So those types of conversations, I think, are really important. I think the key to just raising a sensible human being is to make sure they know who they are, make sure that they don't look up to. It's great to give them strategies. It's great to give them ideas, but that they shouldn't be trying to live someone else's life, like, ever. I think they need to really be clear about what they want in life. And of course they won't know that at certain ages. And also, when you're a kid, you sort of have to try loads of stuff to figure out what you enjoy and what you like anyway. Like, that could go into your 20s, 30s. It could go into your 30s to figure out, I'm still figuring it out. But the important thing to remember there is to not keep up with the Joneses and get swept away with, you've got to be doing a certain lifestyle. You know, you've got to be buying the cars and doing the thing, because that's going to move you further away. Because if you haven't figured it out by the time you're 30, at 30, what you'll do is you'll be so on the hamster wheel, paying out your payments every month and debts and all that, that you won't actually be able to do it. You know, whereas live at home with your parents for as long as you can is a great strategy. I'll promote that to everyone, and figure out, you know, try lots of stuff, get lots of jobs, go to network with people, go and do everything, work at McDonald's, work in the flip, like do everything. And you'll figure out what you don't like, at least, you know, and then when you figure out what you're more gravitating towards, then you can start to double down a little bit. But man, if I could go back, you know, I would just say, just don't worry. Don't be tying yourself down because you're looking up to someone who is fake on social media, or you're just seeing half the coin. It's such an important message, mate. And you know, I love the work that you do with the kids in school. It's so important. You know, that's the cause of all mental health problems. Just that whole looking up to people, an expectation of what your life should be that is unrealistic is what causes anxiety and depression. That's it. Like, that's really it. So, yeah.
Unhealthy comparison. Yeah.
For
makes
sure.
people sad, unhappy, depressed. One last question. You know, it's been really riveting conversation. How has fatherhood changed your kind of understanding or perception of kind of masculinity and what it means to be a man?
That's a really great question. For me, a man, I think we're fairly simple creatures in the way that we just want to feel like we're providing, want to feel appreciated, want to feel that we can lead the way. I don't want to say, I don't mind the term role model, you know, because I want to be a role model. I don't want my kids to look up to me, but I want to demonstrate, I want to set a standard for how they should treat other humans, you know, not so much the money or the success or anything like that, but how you should treat a woman, for instance. You know, I've never lifted a finger, raised my voice at my wife ever in front of our kids. I've always, even though she's like said some negative things about herself, I'll always compliment and say, don't be silly, you know, you're beautiful and all this kind of stuff. I've always demonstrated with my actions and tried to be as congruent as possible with how I believe a man should act. If you want to be appreciated, you want to be a provider, you want to fulfill that role of just what makes us feel like we've got meaning and purpose. And I don't have all the answers, mate, but I've done all right. And we've got a solid family unit, and lead by example. That's what I'd say. Lead by example. There's too many dads out there telling their kids not to eat crap food and all this, or, oh, you'll get fat if you eat this, or you'll get, you know, you're feeding the kids. You know, you can say no to giving them that food. Or I saw a dad telling his kid off for too much time on the iPad, and yet he's sitting there scrolling TikTok. So there's no congruency, you know, and I think congruency gains respect from your kids, and then your kids will start to be respectful people, because if you are who you say you are and you do what you say you're going to do, that is something that's important for your kids to witness. I think that's really what a man is. Someone who does what they say they're going to do, someone who is there, someone who is who you can appreciate because they do what they say they're going to do. That's really, yeah, it's a lot of waffle, but that's what's coming naturally to me.
No, it's beautiful. Be a good role model, follow through, be a leader, lead by example, and it's all
responsibility, accountability. You know, just blame yourself for everything that's in your control. You know, it's like everything you control your perceptions, your actions. Like, you're in control, and you need to take responsibility for that. That's fatherhood for me. That's what a man is.
It's powerful when we take control of our perceptions, because then we're not victim to the world.
Exactly that. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, Jason, I want to say big thank you for the conversation, because it's, you're a seasoned father, you're coming out the upper end. You're into that point now where it's like you said earlier, it's actually stepping back. That's the work for you. It's not the doing. It's like allowing yourself to observe. So like the nuggets and gold that you've, brought through this episode about fatherhood, I'm just so appreciative of you and what you've said today.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I feel like I'm at a point now where like I've got to a point and now it's like step back. Let's look what I've created so far, and look at them and go, what have I got to do now? What have I got to do next? Where have I cocked up? And it's like, right, let's start phase 2. That's where I feel like I'm at for sure.
Yeah. Because I guess it's like when I'm thinking it's like those 20s and 30s, and I look at my parents in my 20s and I was just like rebelling against them continuously. And then I kind of got into my 30s and I was like, oh, actually, some of the stuff that my mum said, especially, was like really good morals and they're really great. And my relationship with them got much better in my 30s because I appreciated them. But for a long time, I was like, you don't know anything. You don't know how the world is, which I imagine you've probably been through a lot of that already.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, it's a fun game.
So I'm sure the listeners are wondering where they can hear more from you, where they can, you talked about your book earlier. I know you've got programs you're running. I know you've got podcasts as well. So where can people find all that about you?
Yeah. If you like this podcast, I'd just say go and listen to my podcast. You can go to alwaysfree.com. That's the name of the podcast, and you can go and find it there, and you'll find all my other, the book and everything there then.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you, Jason. Big thank you to today.
No, thank you.
Listeners, I always say this to listeners, pass this on. There's a man in your life who's a father who's maybe he's coming up to his kids are getting into their teenage years, or they're already there, and he's wondering how he can be a better dad, how he can be the sort of role model to his children that would really set them on the path that maybe he didn't have himself, right? And then this feels like a really perfect episode to send that to that sort of man in your life. Well, another big thank you to Jason. Cheers for today. And listeners, I'll say ciao, ciao.